Hello, everybody.
Hello, Internet.
Welcome back once again
To
the
the
Downlore. I'm Natalie,
I'm Claudia.
and we're here as always, gathered on God's internet to talk about books.
Today, we're gonna throw it way back, and we're just gonna kiki on what it is that sparked our love of reading as kids. And now that we're back into it as adults, what are our fond memories of reading from childhood?
Hell yeah. I don't think this episode is going to be coming out on a Thursday, but we are throwing it back Thursday, I'll tell you that much.
It is always a throwback Thursday if you just think hard enough.
And ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Just a quick little, spoiler alert for all the books we're going to mention. I can't even promise that we have all of them planned and listed out because we're just going to kind of freestyle it here and just shoot the shit about
things
our
might
favorite
come
childhood
up we
books.
haven't even planned on.
But all of these books will be YA or even below, like middle grade. So if you haven't read them by now, I'm really not sorry. That's on you. You should have hit the library a little more in middle school.
And you know, maybe you just won't, and that's fine. This is all you need to know. These are the vibes you need to know about these books, and that'll be enough if you haven't read them. But I think just kind of like zooming out, Natalie and I had kind of similar re-entry journeys into reading fantasy as adults with ACOTAR. But then like going back to when we were kids, you start to realize like, okay, there were some moments where we always knew we would end up being kind of addicted to reading. And we'd kind of like fallen into those like little mini rabbit holes, only to be pulled back out frequently by academic reading. And now that we are free of the chains of academia, now we've like tumbled down the rabbit hole and stayed there, but we're gonna kind of, you know, reminisce, if you will, about those series that started tugging us in the direction of reading. And the signs, they were these signs pointing towards, you know, all roads lead to nerdhood, addiction.
If there's one thing I'm going to do, it's meander down memory lane. It's going to be take a nice long stroll down the street named Nostalgia. And
Correct.
It's one of my favorite pastimes to do. Talk to and think about things I liked when I was a kid. And what is being an adult if not a grown-up child with adult money?
So true.
I paid money for this.
If
like
you're not
6
watching,
months ago.
If you're not watching on video, Natalie is literally holding up a Pokemon plushie.
And I got another one right here. And I got another one right here.
I'm literally using,
I
using them as an armrest.
I spent adult money on these. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's who I am. I have always loved a good little fantasy escapism journey. I love the idea of other worlds that aren't this one, and magic and powers and such. And the books I will talk about in this episode are clearly indicative of that fact.
Yeah.
I guess I'll get us started. I had a very prolonged reading journey. I was an avid reader from childhood all the way through middle school, and then like 8th grade, high school, academia kind of took over, as it does for most people. But I think the very first series that I picked up was Harry Potter.
Quintessential.
Not unlike most people, although slightly rare for someone my age. I was born in 2000. I know, shocker.
Every time I hear that fact about you, it just like throws me for a loop. I'm not that much older than you, but like the 2 instead of the 1990, you know, just really
the terrible 2. But yes, I was born in 2000, and I was kind of hitting prime Harry Potter age when the last books and movies were starting to come out, and there was just Pottermania everywhere when I was growing up. When I was like 5 through 8, it was 2005 through 2008, the height of Pottermania. And I would go to Barnes & Noble with my mom, and there would be a crazy display of Harry Potter books in there. And I remember being 6 years old and walking in there. I'm a first grader or a kindergartner. You know, it's like, Mom, I want to read that.
Yeah.
Because if the big kids are reading it, I'm going to have to read it.
Yeah. Which is so funny because I think as you get older, like our age difference doesn't really, we don't really think about it all that much now that we're like in our 20s. But like when you take it back that far to hear that you were in like first grade reading all that, like all of my friends, like this was like a later elementary school thing for us.
Yeah.
So like these are books that like people just had around. For me, it was 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah. For me, it was, there was a backlog for sure.
Yeah.
I think the first Harry Potter book came out before I was born.
Stop it. And now I feel geriatric. I say this like literally I just had to stand up and stretch my knees. Like
and listen, my birthday is in a couple weeks. I'm only 23. I'm about to turn 24 and it's starting to hit my hips, you guys. I've been sitting crisscross applesauce for about 2 hours because we recorded another episode before this, and my hips are stiff, man.
I texted Natalie the other day, like, I'm hitting that age where, like, just standing or sitting, even in comfortable positions for too long, like, my body gets stuck. Anyway, back to Harry Potter.
But, I mean, if that ain't a marker of our age, I don't know what is. But yeah, I picked up Harry Potter. I was always, that kid that was like being rated at a much higher grade level for reading than my age. And I think that's just because I always loved to read. I read a ton even before that of just like, children's books, Dr. Seuss.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Dr. Seuss. Oh, The Places You'll Go was my favorite Dr. Seuss book, which says a lot because that's a very fantastical book about a person going on a journey and ain't that what I write and read. So.
We're going places now, mentally, of course.
Of course. But yeah, I really loved Harry Potter. Obviously, like, I don't even need to give a spoiler warning for that because everyone and their mother except for Claudia apparently has read Harry Potter.
Okay. Now that that's on the internet, I feel like I have to defend myself. When I was in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, like that whole tranche of my life, I grew up doing ballet, so I had very like limited time to like do homework and like do all of my training and like all of that and read. And so like I really only took one reading detour during my like late elementary, middle, and high school years, and that was for Twilight. And I literally did not have the mental capacity to embark upon a series like Harry Potter. And the thing is, I most likely will read it sometime this year. Like, I'm going to read it as an adult, even though it is fully, like, explained on Amazon as being, like, a 3rd to 6th grade reading level.
But it's so good. So
right.
Fun.
I don't care. I will go back and read it. But those years of my life were so jam-packed full of things that I was, like, stressed just getting through my existing academic work, like, even from middle school. And so I was like, okay, I took a little detour for Twilight. Like, that happened. Had a great time.
And to be fair, we're kind of on even footing with that because I never read Twilight, and I did watch all the movies, and they're my favorite comedies, but I never read the books, because I was kind of a tomboy growing up. I exclusively shopped in the boys section at Dick's Sporting Goods until I was like 12, because I just like had guy friends as a little kid because I was like into guy stuff. I liked Pokemon. I liked, building stuff and Legos, and I wasn't really into the like quintessential girlhood romance stuff until much later. So Twilight was just like something I vehemently refused to partake in because I just didn't like the idea of a vampire romance. That wasn't something that appealed to me. I wanted to read about a little boy like stealing lightning from the gods,
Right. It's so valid. I was a little skeptical, so all right, we'll jump into Twilight then. We might as well. That one was like, I was in the 7th grade when the first movie came out, and I did not read the books until the movies started coming out. So Twilight, the movie, comes out. I went to see it in theaters before reading the books because I remember my mom was like, you should probably go see what this is all about. I was like, I don't I don't think I need to do that. And she was like, let's just go see the movie. And I was like, okay. So
the quest that launched 1,000 ships for you.
So I'm gonna, on God's internet, going to admit my mother and I saw Twilight together. For the first time I saw it was with my mom at the Landmark Theater at the West Side Pavilion Mall, which no longer exists. If you're in LA, like RIP, the West Side Pavilion. And I had to sit there in my very, very comfortable leather seat, this reclining leather seat, watching Twilight with my mother as a, I don't know, 12-year-old. And
so awesome.
And then I was like, okay, well, since I've seen the movie, like, let me see how the book stacks up to the movie, or how the movie stacks up to the book. So I got the first book. I read the first book like exclusively over like the Thanksgiving holiday of that year, 2008, and like excused myself from the Thanksgiving table. Was like, I'm done with my food.
So real.
Like, I'm done with Thanksgiving food. I'm gonna go have like girl dinner now. We didn't even have a term for that.
So real.
So I like, went off and read that, and then it became my entire personality. Anyone who went to middle and high school with me knows this. Like, anyone. It became my entire personality. I had a shirt that said I heart boys who sparkle.
No, it's so real and so fair, because I feel like that did happen to a lot of people, myself included, when the Hunger Games came out when I was in middle school. Aging myself once again.
Wild.
The Hunger Games, I think the books came out a little bit earlier, but the movies were coming out in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
When I was 12, 13 in middle school. And the Hunger Games was just a cultural reset. I literally remember reading the first Hunger Games book in one sitting in my basement, my parents' basement. And we had like a couch down there. But for some reason, I literally do not remember what circumstance landed me here. I was sitting on the floor.
Nice.
Like face down, holding my pee, because I didn't want to have to get up and peel my eyes away from the book to go to the bathroom.
Just like no distractions.
I'm literally locked the fuck in reading this book at 13 in my parents' basement.
That is so funny.
And then I got like a Mockingjay pin, and the rest of the story. So.
Yeah. So Hunger Games for me was like end of high school, right as I was like going to college. And I remember reading it, I think it was like over the summer or some sort of like school break. I brought it with me, like my entire family, we went to Palm Springs. And so I read in Palm Springs. My mom was like, let's go get our nails done. I was like,
I can't.
I was like,
where am I going to put my book? How am I going to flip the pages?
Right. I was like, the logistics of that aren't really working out for me, so I'm just going to not do that. And yeah, that was like after Twilight, that was the next one that like hooked me and like got me in real good. That was when like all the girlies started like going and taking archery lessons.
Yeah. And I will say the Hunger Games was gritty enough to get me interested, despite the fact that there was like a romance arc. And I tried to deny it to myself because I had built this whole tomboy identity, but I was obsessed with the romance arc in secret. I wouldn't talk about it with anyone because I was like, oh, I'm not reading it for that. But
yeah.
I was living for it. And I think the little subtle romance subplots in the Hunger Games are what got me into, I read all the dystopian fantasies you can think of, but one series I really liked, and I don't hate to admit it on God's internet because it was great at the time, and it probably is great for any preteen. The Matched series, looking back objectively, so bad it makes no sense. But I was seated, okay? I was seated for the Matched series. Let me tell you something. This was the first like dystopian series that I read that was like really the central plot point was the romance. Could not tell you the main character's name or the guy's name, but basically it was about this society where you are like, it's like a Black Mirror kind of thing where you're matched with someone and you basically are just like, you get assigned a job and you get assigned a match, and it's like Black Mirror family unit, kind of like The Giver energy.
Oh, The Giver. My God.
Yes.
Throwback.
So good. The Giver does the concept so much better than Matched, but Matched was like the reality TV trash version of The Giver.
The fanfic of The Giver.
it was so good. Basically it's about the girl being like, oh, but I love this other guy because we talk about poetry, because poetry is banned in this society,
of course,
and there's this stupid fucking Alfred Lord Tennyson poem at the beginning of the inscription, and it's like the do not go gently into that good night poem, and they just fucking recite it to each other all the time, and it's so annoying. It's like I just lived for those books. It was just these two characters like sneaking off and going on a quest, and there was 3 books. I don't even remember what fucking happened, but I do remember they like wandered through the desert, and there was like Hunger Games kind of like airships chasing after them because they broke the system.
Obviously,
you know the vibes. But yeah, so fun, so fresh.
So the reason that we kind of like cite for reading nowadays is like, oh, we want to escape, we want, you know, to live in different worlds, and as adults, you know, now we're very much like in tune with like current events of, you know, where the world we live in and like what's going on in the world. When you're kids, like your entire world is like school, family, extracurriculars, whatever it is. And so I don't think you fully register the like escapism aspect of reading until you're a little bit older, until you're actually like living in your own distinct reality.
That's a really good point.
But now that I understand that, when I think back to the books that I read and the ones that stuck with me, I remember specifically like the feelings of like feeling the emotions of the books so viscerally. And when I was younger, I was like, why do I feel so much? Why do I feel so much for these books? Why does it hit me so hard? And the first time that ever happened, I was reading this series called The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, which was like a 5th grade read for me because I was assigned, like our entire class was assigned a project, and the project was to read a book that employed anthropomorphism, and then we all had to do a project on it. Book was up to us. We could pick whatever we wanted. And so I just
didn't
like
want to pick Animorphs from the Scholastic Book Fair.
Look, I walked into the library and I was like,
Animorphs haunt my dreams, you guys. I can't. I'm sorry.
I walked into the library and I was like, I asked the librarian for like anthropomorphic books, and she was like, literally every single 5th grader's been in here asking for this. She's like, I'm running out of recommendations because you guys all have to read different stuff. I was like, okay. So I ended up with this book about owls. And it's a series. I think there's like 12 books or something like that. Anyway. And I specifically remember in the 4th book of this series, there's this like big battle scene, and like one of the like young band of owls that you're following, one of their mentors gets killed. It hurt me so bad. It hurt me so badly. I was crestfallen, devastated, like depressed, unwell. And I was like, my God. And it was just like kind of like this weird moment that lives rent free in my brain, if only because it's the first time that ever happened to me. And I think that's the moment where I really, really felt for the first time the power of books, because it allows you to live outside your own reality and allows you to experience emotions in a safe space, because it's not real, in a safe space to like let yourself get taken on the roller coaster ride. And like you can recover because it's not real. You're just, it's like, you know, sending yourself through, it's like being in dreams. You're not actually in danger.
Totally. But the emotions very much are real. Like I have a physiological response sometimes.
Oh,
to
yeah,
things
yeah.
that I'm reading.
The emotions are most definitely real. And like you break out in chills, you get nervous, a heart rate elevates, like all that stuff. You get hot and bothered, you get like hot flashes, whatever. Those are very real. Can confirm. But the recovery from that, you're not actually in any sort of peril. So you're like fine to come down off of the high.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. And I feel like I had similar feelings throughout several books that I read as a kid. Like even I'm thinking like some of the Dr. Seuss books, I even remember being like, why do I feel like I'm in a liminal space right now without knowing what a liminal space was? But
Right.
like that's what it felt like reading
Mhm.
like Oh, the Places You'll Go. And I have visceral, so weird. I still will, to this day, will get flashbacks to like snapshots from like children's books that I read as a kid. Like this one book, literally don't even remember the title of it. It's the illustration that sticks with me, and the story. But it was like a lizard on an island, and it just had this very like construction paper sort of illustration style, and it just sticks with me, and it gives me this feeling, and I don't know how to describe it. It's not even like just nostalgia. It's just there's such a
There's
strong
an associated
feeling
Yeah.
with some of these books, and like Goodnight Moon also, for some reason, like I just had this very strong feeling about like seeing a bear with a cookie in bed.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's so bizarre. But I know exactly what you're talking about, and I had the same sort of situation when I read my own anthropomorphic animal series in 5th grade, which we talked about briefly. We both read The Warrior
Cats. Also, we did not go to the same school, so I think it's really funny that we both had these like very similar like 5th grade anthropomorphic phases. Like,
and this wasn't an assignment for school for me. This was an assignment from a girl I was trying to be friends with. She was like, I love these books, you need to read them. And I was like, yes ma'am, anything you say. And
you know what's so funny is that I also got the recommendation to read The Warrior Cats from like a girl in my grade, because she had read the Owl series, and she was like, after she finished that, she went into Warrior Cats, and so she was like, when you're done with the Owl books, start reading these with me.
The Warrior Cats were a serb, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay, I googled it the other day. It is like an ongoing series, and it is
There's so many books, I know.
prolific. I fell off the cliff like after a few series, because these are like 6-book series, but like series after series after series, all in the same like continuation.
Yeah,
I think I fell off after like 21 books.
I don't remember all that much or like how many I read, but I read enough so that me and this girl could like at indoor recess, because I grew up in Massachusetts, so there was bad weather a lot. And in winter we wouldn't go outside. If it was like snowing or raining really hard and cold, we would have indoor recess. And at indoor recess we would whip open these journals, and we would come up with our own cat clans.
Yes.
We would name them.
Yes.
We would describe what they looked like, and what their little power was. And it was
living
a
for
great
this
time. I need to find them, because I do have journals from when I was a kid. I have 3rd grade journals that I made an author Instagram recently. I posted some pictures from them, just to prove how long I have felt called in my bones to write fantasy books.
That is so funny.
But yeah, I know for a fact that they're somewhere. My cat clan.
Yeah.
From Warriors Cats.
Yeah. And like, it blows my mind, because even at such a young age, to realize that like there are series of books out there, long series, like Harry Potter is a long series, but like Warrior Cats is like a different level of long. I'm pretty sure
Warrior
they're
Cats
still
is like
writing
anime length, like One Piece vibes. Like,
yeah,
it just keeps going.
and so to be able to latch on to a series and keep reading and be in a world for so long and have the mental dexterity to follow, determination to see it through to, I won't say the end, because it's we didn't make it to the end, but I'm pretty sure like I made it through to the point where I was caught up at whatever point in time I stopped with like new releases.
Yeah.
And so at that point I was like waiting months at a time to get new books, and then I like eventually
I was obsessed. I was addicted.
Yeah.
And I don't even like cats like that. So it was like kind of a venture for me. Like I was pretty resistant to starting them, because this girl was like telling me I needed to read them, and I was like, well, I want to be her friend, but I don't really like cats like that.
You're like, I'm not a kitty cat person.
But I took a chance.
But y'all, these are fucking feral cats, okay? These are feral cats.
It's like they're
lions. They're lions.
Warrior
They're like
cats,
lions.
okay? They're like cats that form societies in the woods.
Yeah, they're clans, and they have territories, and they defend their territories, and there's politics, and there's leaders and rankings and omens, and it's so good. It's so enthralling.
I loved them.
Oh, I lived for Rusty turning into
whatever the hell their names were.
All I remember is,
which literally is the plot of Red Rising, by the way. Like a Rusty is the it's like he's like a domesticated cat that like then emerges into the woods. That's literally the plot of Red Rising.
That's so funny.
Pierce Brown, I'm on to you.
Pierce Brown Red Warrior Cats.
Sarah J. Maas watched Danny Phantom. Pierce Brown Red Warrior Cats. The list goes on. Okay, we all draw inspiration from somewhere.
Write what you know.
You have to write what you know. It's just the bottom line. Like, listen, I have a fantasy book on my backlog that I'm going to write one day. That is definitely heavily inspired by my Pokemon obsession, okay? And y'all are gonna love it.
Yeah.
So,
hey, the people love Pokemon, so like,
I'm gonna admit it right now.
It's fan service.
Pokemon was an inspiration. Am I going to steal from them? No, because they are the biggest license in the world and they will sue me. But I was inspired. Okay? And that's that. On that. Moving on. Other things I lived for. The Mysterious Benedict Society. This book series was everything to me. It was absolutely everything to me. Next to Percy Jackson, it was just like a group of very, well, not all of them were smart, but clever and or inventive children that were basically covertly recruited to do reconnaissance missions. And they were so slay. There was one kid who was just like, basically they took an entrance exam for this like school or society, and it was kind of a ruse. So you had to pass the exam in some way, whether that's what the main character does. He like realizes that the answers to all the questions are in other questions throughout the test.
Slay.
So he like solves the riddle and figures out how to pass the test that way. Then there's another kid who's just a fucking nerd and he knows all the answers to the questions like trivia. Then there's another kid who like sneaks out of the exam by stealing someone's pencil or something. He like does some back end way where he doesn't actually end up having to take the test. And then there's like a girl who has superpowers or something. I don't even really remember, but it's like a ragtag group of kids that pass a test and form the Mysterious Benedict Society, and then they from there solve mysteries and stuff.
So jumping forward to like the 10th grade, I went on, speaking of mysteries, I went on a very intense Agatha Christie bender. And what I think is so kind of wild is that I had an Agatha Christie book assigned to me as like an actual like academic, like we read it for school. I still don't understand why. It was my summer reading going into 10th grade. Why was the Murder on the Orient Express summer reading, you ask? I really don't know, but there are a couple reasons why it's significant. First of all, because it sent me on this Agatha Christie bender, which I read Murder on the Orient Express at the beginning of the summer, and I was like, well, now that I've done this and I enjoyed it, I'm going to read as much of Agatha Christie's repertoire as I can, because she's
me with Toni Morrison.
Yeah, because she's prolific. And that was the first time I think I ever went through one of those phases where it was like very author focused, where it wasn't like I'm reading a series necessarily. It's not chronological. Like all of Agatha Christie's books, like she's got groups that follow the same inspectors, but they're not necessarily, they're like standalones, right? They don't all have to be read in chronological order. So it was the first time I like went down the rabbit hole of an author. And this is very important to my grown-up reading journey now. That was the class in 10th grade. That year was the year I had a teacher who quizzed us on the last word of every single book that we would read. And the last word of Murder on the Orient Express is the word case. Has never left me. I will remember that until the day I kick the bucket, until I am pushing daisies. I will probably murmur it in my sleep from the grave. And it has since started my habit of looking at the last word of every book.
Oh, I know where this is going.
And this is the reason why I opened House of Sky and Breath, the second book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. And even though I did not know how we were going to get to, I'm not going to spoil it because the people who came for this episode do not deserve the spoiler that I gave myself. But when I opened that one,
is the worst possible spoiler.
I did not even know how we were going to get there. So the plot of the book was still very much a mystery to me. And honestly, knowing that a certain someone was there at the very end was motivation, because that book was lacking in a few places in terms of plot. I was just
looking
like,
at you, Pippa.
I was just like, okay, how are we getting back here? How are we getting to this ending? Like, how is it all going to tie together? But yes, that was the like founding moment for doing the like, let me check the back of the book for the last word. And it didn't spoil anything because like it wasn't a big deal to know the last word of The Great Gatsby before you got to the end of The Great Gatsby. But like when you're reading these like plot heavy fantasy novels, it kind of fucks you over.
Yeah, I've made that foible a few times myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes I mean, my eyes will do the thing where they cheat a little bit.
And they like look down the page.
And they look either down the page or like up the page a little more, being like, how did we get to this last word? And that's just a mistake every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I did the same thing with Toni Morrison. I read Sula in 10th grade, and it became quickly one of my favorite books. It's amazing. If you haven't read anything by Toni Morrison, go. That's your homework. It's not fantasy, obviously, but she's one of the most important authors of the last century, if not ever, of all time. And yeah, after I read Sula, I spent the summer reading Song of Solomon, Beloved, Bluest Eye, whole nine, all of it. Everything Toni Morrison's ever written, I've read it.
It's wonderfully academic. I was over here trying to solve mysteries.
No, I was just obsessed. Like, her writing style is so unique and poetic and gorgeous, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not a very common writing style in any other genre or by any other author, but that's why Toni Morrison is Toni Morrison and no one else is Toni Morrison.
Hey, there's a space for everyone, and she's unique, and she carved out her own space.
Yeah. Yeah, but speaking of books that are so unique, there's literally nothing else like them. The Phantom Tollbooth was another absolute classic that just lives rent-free in my head. I absolutely I've read it like probably 7 or 8 times. And I still will revisit it from time to time. Same with another book I'll mention in a minute. It's obviously a children's book to teach you about language and just the power of words. And it still sticks with me so much because as a writer and as a reader and as a lover of books, I feel like that foundation was so important for my perspective on how powerful language really is and how powerful words really are and how amazing it is that we can even do that. Like, we somehow, humans are so intelligent and so powerful that we were able to create a way that we can communicate, or we can at least learn and teach each other to communicate using this silly little, in the English language, set of 26 symbols and a couple of other, I guess they're also symbols, like periods and commas and things, grammatical punctuation, to communicate and tell stories.
Yeah, not only to like describe the real world and what we're feeling and what we're thinking and what we want to say, you know, in real life, but also to imagine up completely fictional scenarios, fictional worlds, and like just like literally have conversations between people that don't exist.
Language is the most powerful tool we have, and I feel like not enough people realize that in our world today, and a lot of people take it for granted.
Yeah.
So much stupid shit gets said on Twitter, and so much stupid shit gets said on the news, and I think everyone should appreciate language a little more and appreciate its ability to not just destroy, but also
Build.
create and build.
And both Natalie and I are writing our own books, right? And I don't think we fully appreciate even the extent to which like word choice matters so much until you're like, out here writing long pieces of literature and you're like, okay, I need to.
Yep. I literally just wrote the prologue for my book, and it's less than a page, and it had to be very specific. And I spent a full like 2 hours putting together that less than a page of text because I was like literally just staring at my screen, watching my cursor blink, like trying to perfectly select every word.
Yeah. And like I'm writing a contemporary romance. Like there's nothing otherworldly like going on here. It's very much rooted in like LA and very stereotypical LA things. But when you're reading contemporary romances, it feels fun and like just lighthearted. And you're like, okay, how much thought actually goes into each word? Even for something like contemporary romance, a lot of thought.
Yeah.
And then you layer on top of that, like in other genres, fantastical elements. And then, if you're writing something that's based in a different like time period, medieval, like something historical, and you have to be thinking about the word choice for a setting, a time, a location,
making up new stuff,
like aristocratic language versus just normal plebeian language.
Well, and all of that contributes to tone, right? It's so insane that we can convey tone so clearly off of a page. And how strong of an influence that has on the reader's interpretation of what they're reading. Like, tone can completely change your perception of the story that you read, even if it's the exact same words.
Yeah.
It's wild, and it's crazy that every reader can have their own interpretation based on if they have some different perception of what the tone is. But yeah, I love language. Language is so cool, and the Phantom Toll Booth was really foundational in building that appreciation and that understanding. And like, I think about Milo and the Doldrums all the time when I'm sitting at my computer, like having a moment of writer's block. I'm like, oh, I'm in that little toy car in the Doldrums right now. How do I drive myself out? And yeah, I love that book. It's so imaginative and creative, and really, I feel like as impactful as language itself is, the ability to tell storytelling is the universal language. Even if you don't, that's why film is so cool. Even if you don't understand what's being said, like a compelling acting performance or really good animation, you can understand what's going on
facial
and
expressions,
have an
body
emotional
language,
reaction to it, regardless of what's being said. And I think that's incredible, and we just learn so much through storytelling. That's how we learn. We learn through the who, what, when, where, and why of everything, right? Like, think about your history classes, think about your English classes, think about even math classes. The way that you're taught is through some sort of story with a beginning, middle, and an end,
right? And
some sort of moral. Like, even, I'm just gonna take a very simple like addition example. When you are learning about math, you are like taught stories about numbers, right? 1 + 2 = 3. If you don't have 1 and you don't have 2, you're gonna have to find another way to get 3. Like,
right, it's very much
equation
like
itself is a story in a way,
right? Like, if you want to get to your end goal, like there are steps you need to get there, and that's like the order of operations. And what is
PEMDAS?
what is any plot if not just an order of different operations happening and trying to achieve a certain outcome? And it's funny because I actually describe, when I'm like writing something, I'm writing a scene, I describe it like trying to do like a geometry proof. You've got givens, which are your starting point, and you at least probably have an idea of like where you need the scene to end up, right? Because you got this general like direction the story's heading, and the middle part, how you get there, is unknown, and there can be multiple ways to get there. Like, there's
you've
not
got a
just
toolbox at your disposal.
right. There's not just one way to get from point A to point B. However, they have to build on each other. And so sometimes you'll be like, okay, given all of this, you go through and you like, you know, make a couple of lines of your proof, and then all of a sudden you realize it's not actually taking you in the direction that you want. You got to backtrack and find the point where you can like redirect. And there are multiple ways you can get there, sure, and you pick one, but you got to figure out what it is, and they layer on top of each other. So it's like, that's what dialogue is. It's just bouncing from one person to another, but it's got to build towards something.
No, I love that example, and I totally relate to it as I don't know if anyone listening knows, but I majored in engineering in college, and
I didn't, so my geometry proof days are a long time ago.
Well, I'll enhance and build on it. I had to write a great many lab reports in my day, and they could be about any number of things, but it was always something obviously scientific, and science is storytelling, you guys. Writing a lab report, the crux of what we were graded on is, did you effectively and accurately tell the story that we were wanting you to tell?
Yeah.
Did you tell us, you know, you have a thermocouple in boiling water, and how fast did it cool off and why? You have to get from point A to point B. I took this thermocouple and it was supposed to do this. This is what I expected to happen.
The fuck is
But
a thermocouple?
No.
Don't explain it. That's fine.
For those unaware, a thermocouple.
Me. That's me. Those unaware is me.
It's a piece of metal that has a sensor in it, and so it's able to detect how hot or cold something is, and can detect how fast something cools off.
Oh,
or
okay.
how fast something heats up.
Got it.
A
thermometer with superpowers.
Yeah. A steroidal thermometer.
An enhanced thermometer.
Super special, extra royal, powerful, super rare princess thermometer. But yes, so you could like, you take the thermocouple, you put it in boiling water, and you take it out. What did I expect to happen? Well, I expected to see that it got really hot, and then I took it out, and it took a little while to cool off. And based on the kind of material that it was, here's how long I expected that to be. And there's a couple of equations that you can use to prove that. But here's what actually happened. Here's what data I collected, and here's what I saw in the trends. And here's the answer of like what actually happened, why I think it happened.
Yeah. Storytelling.
Telling a story. Crafting like what you expected to happen versus what actually happened. Give us a plot. Give us the characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did thermocouple do? We need to know.
And you have to be very explicit, especially with like lab reports. Like your language has to be really, really precise.
Oh my God, don't even get me started. There's a very specific writing style that you have to have. You have to talk in past passive when you are writing a lab report. So,
which is funny because that is like usually what you're supposed to, you're supposed to like stay away from that, because it's like so very literally passive, like removed, like it doesn't really stir up emotional reactions, which is perfect for science.
It's very sterile. Yeah, you have to say,
it's literally sterile. Mm-hmm.
The thermocouple was placed in the water, and then it was done, and then it was removed, and that's
so dull.
It's extremely dull. I tried to add a little bit of spice, but sometimes that was hard. But sometimes my professors didn't like it. So but I made it through, and now I'm never going to write in past passive ever again. I'm just going to write in the plain old past tense, and I'm going to tell silly little stories that could never, ever actually happen in a real world, and I'm never going to talk about thermocouple ever again.
We are putting thermocouple to bed right here, right now.
We are putting my degree in a frame and then putting it over there and then leaving it alone.
Yeah. And what I think is interesting, too, is like both Natalie and myself, like neither one of us studied writing. We read for fun as kids. We're reading for fun again as adults, but neither one of us was like 5 years old and determined to be an author, or like knew that this is where we were going to end up, like being wholly down bad for, you know, so many fictional men, and like deciding after reading many books that like, you know, I think we can do this. Like, I never considered myself creative enough to write a book. I'm just going to say it. I never thought I was creative enough to do this. And I think it's like when you're a math and science person, I studied business, but like in college,
it's
but
that like siloing effect where
yeah,
you pigeonhole yourself because you're
into
like,
something
oh, well,
practical.
I'm good at this thing, so and because it's practical and I can make money doing it,
Yeah,
I
gonna
must
study
be this
it.
thing.
And like when you're good at math and science, to your point about like math is just, means to an end, and science, there's storytelling. When you're good at those sort of things, you kind of discount the creative aspect of them because they are pretty black and white on like, especially in like the younger academic years. And so, there's like history and English people, and then there's like math and science people, and you feel like you're either in one of those camps, and if you're in one, you're probably not in the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so to like have evolved academically in one camp and then realize that like, wait, I've been delusional this whole time, and now I finally know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Read a lot of books and then try writing one. Slay.
Yeah, and I think there's also an element of it's not imposter syndrome. It's just like, I guess, self-doubt, which is obviously like common for everyone across all fields. Especially those as risky as writing a book or like going into film or something like that, where it's very competitive and lots of people want to do it. The fact of the matter is, everything is competitive these days.
Yeah.
Getting a job is competitive, no matter what job it is.
Right.
There's always going to be someone out there who wants it, and there's always going to be someone out there who's better at it than you.
And there's always going to be someone out there who's not better at it than you, but is so confident in themselves that they think they're good enough to do it. And if you don't freaking put yourself out there, they're going to get their book published, their film picked up, the job that you're interviewing for, whatever, just because they had the confidence to go after something for which they are unqualified.
And listen, neither of us are saying we're qualified, but
no, but that's exactly our point, is that we're just, you gotta fuck around to find out sometimes.
No, this is gonna sound extremely corny, but I, as a person who grew up in Boston in the 2000s, Wayne Gretzky was everywhere.
You cannot
he
bring
was
up
a Bruin at that time, and
you cannot bring up hockey around me after all the hockey smut I have read, Natalie. Anyway, continue.
But Wayne Gretzky once said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." And that was on every single motivational, inspirational quote poster in my elementary school and middle school. Thank you. And it is burned into my brain. And I know that everyone knows that quote, but like, it was especially prominent as a child growing up in the suburbs of Boston.
It's so funny.
And it's true, dude. Like,
no, it's so true.
We've reached this kind of crossroads in life.
It's also just math. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Math.
So
probability.
But I feel like after studying engineering, after deciding that I don't know if I want to be an engineer, this isn't really my jam. Like, I got out of there with the degree. I did well in school. I'm, very academically qualified on paper to do that. But it just didn't do it for me. Like, there were so many men in those classes that just gave so much more of a fuck about what we were doing than I did. I just wanted to do a good job because I knew I could, and I knew it was like good and cool to be able to say I'm an engineering major because it means that you're smart and hardworking. But I already knew that about myself. I didn't need the piece of paper to prove it to me. I just didn't know that when I was 18 and I had to choose a college major.
Right.
Also, like, it was fair. Like, it's such a practical thing to major in because if I were to fail at doing something creative, I have an engineering degree to fall back on, which, like, these days doesn't mean all that much anyways. But I digress. Point being, I feel like we, as, like, people who were kind of boxed as math science people throughout high school and college, kind of put ourselves in that box. When you're in those classrooms, your professors and your peers are all talking about your career and where you're going to go and what you're going to do with your degree, and they're prepping you for interviews and they're prepping you for what working life is going to be like. And there's little time to have a dream outside of what has been predestined for you in those classroom settings. And I always knew in my heart of hearts, as proven by my third grade journals, that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to write stories. And it's why I went to the school I went to. I also wanted to study film because I thought maybe that's something I really wanted to do, because I've always loved film. I think it's such a powerful storytelling medium. But really, like, at the end of the day, bottom line, I love stories. I love telling stories, and I love fantastical worlds, and I love escapism. It's just always been something that's excited me. Who doesn't love dragons more than real life? I mean, there's some people do love real life more than dragons. I'm not one of them. Someone's
got to read the nonfiction and tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it won't be me, but like,
we'll tell them about.
Please give us the too long didn't read.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And then, like, when you just want to hear something silly, dragons.
Yes, we're here. And like, even saying it's silly, like, we're aware it's silly, but is also like slightly a disservice, at least, because it takes a lot of creativity and intelligence to build these worlds,
and for readers to follow along. Like, you know, just because something is,
it can also be very metaphorical and be a complete allegory for something happening in the real world. I mean, my book is based in the real world, but has fantastical elements, more of a magical realism situation than a full-blown high fantasy. But even still, like, I definitely make social commentary in the book, even though I know it's silly, even though it has a very humorous tone about it. Like, the whole intention, and much like Good Omens, the book I'm reading right now, it's very jokey, it's very silly, but it does touch on the human condition,
right? And
like the state of the world right now,
right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, we are writing about people, and we are people, and so we like inherently infuse part of our human condition, or human condition we've observed, into the characters that we write.
And isn't that the meaning of life, to understand the human condition?
I think really the purpose of reading, and the joy of reading, and the wonder of it all, is that you can then learn about life experiences that you've never had, even if it's fiction, because like we just said, everything fiction is still rooted a little bit in like experience, and
it does live in you.
Yeah, like any author who's out here writing something fictional, sure, it might not have happened to them. Like Rebecca Yarros sure as hell did not go to Dragon War College, but like she has said that Violet, her main character's condition, her medical condition, is based off of the condition that Rebecca Yarros herself has. And so like there is a part of like, there is something to be learned from that, and there is something to be learned about someone's life experience with a condition like that, even if it's never going to happen that someone like that is in a Dragon War College in real life. Like, they are going to have to navigate the world.
Same with Kale. Like, Sarah J. Maas
put him in a wheelchair.
She's never been a disabled human man among magically blessed friends,
right? But it gives you the ability to kind of empathize with someone who is like handicapped in a way that you haven't experienced. And it expands your horizons, because even the reality of the world we live in, and seeing the news and what's happening with other people in other parts of the world, that gives you experiences that you've obviously never lived, because they're not your experiences. But this just expands that even further, and it like pushes those boundaries. And I think honestly it makes people more empathetic, even to read fiction, even reading fantastical things, silly, quote unquote silly things. I think it makes people more empathetic.
I totally agree. And especially when you get to read complex characters that are we're really harkening back to last episode, even especially reading complex characters where the villains have a motivation that humanizes them, and they truly believe they're doing the thing that's right for either themselves or the world or the people that they love. Like, it really shows you in a very approachable and also intimate way what someone else might be thinking, and really helps you to do that more in your own life. Like, someone's mean to you, oh no, like, they probably are going through something,
right?
It's probably not your fault.
Like, and you know, on the topic of villains, it reminds me of, you know, the Hunger Games prequel of Songbirds and Snakes.
Totally.
Right? You got like President Snow, and he's just like a nasty dude in the main trilogy, but to get his backstory and to see how he
understand what made him that way.
Right, and to understand that he started out like he was such a dreamer when he started out. You know, he had like hopes and dreams and goals for himself, and like goals for Lucy, who was his District 12 tribute. And then to watch society just like completely crush him and turn him into a monster, like, it's, I think it makes people more empathetic, even to read fiction, even reading fantastical things, silly, quote unquote silly things. I think it makes people more empathetic. yeah, it gives him complexity, whereas in the main trilogy, he's just kind of like stagnantly bad.
Yeah.
And you know, that book came out in 2020, which blows my mind. Like, that was a pandemic book.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the book was probably written before.
Right.
But
like came out in May of 2020.
Yeah.
Which seems like forever ago, but also feels like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, but we really do have the pandemic to thank for getting back into reading in a big way.
Yeah, we really do. For book talk and the internet resurgence of books, and then from there, just books going viral. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's just like, I've been hearing about this book everywhere. I might as well see what it's all about. And like, that could be the thing that gets you back into reading.
Yeah, love it.
So all that to say, we're very happy that we meandered our way back into the realm of ink on paper.
Yeah,
and hallucinating vividly.
And all that to say, you know, you might pigeonhole yourself into a certain box that you think you belong in because everyone around you is telling you that that's where you belong, and you might have voices telling you it's unreasonable to aim for anything else. It's unreasonable to follow your dream or to even have the dream of writing a book, of writing a film, of
right, like, who do you think you are to think you can do this?
Or it's the same effect that happens to people who want to, you know, be pop stars or be movie stars. It's like, it's just the odds are so slim to enter those kinds of industries that I think you get a lot of naysayers. And my phone's buzzing. Can you stop calling me, please?
Books over boyfriends.
Yes. And the bottom line is, we're very grateful to reading for reminding us why storytelling is so important to us and to the world, and that there is space for us to do it.
Yeah. And
that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and you have to just follow your dream and write the fucking book. If you want to write a book, write your damn book. And guess what? If no one wants to publish it, you can publish it yourself.
Amazon publishing, baby.
Or it can just live in your Google Drive forever. Who fucking cares? But if you have a story inside of you that you need to tell, just tell it.
Yeah. And we're so grateful to the internet and just like knowing now that like you can have all of these book communities to talk about books with and to like have this kind of discourse. I think when we were younger, it's like sometimes you would read books and you would have these series and you were just kind of like felt alone in your reading. And I think that was just a function of where we were at technologically at the time. Like, you were either reading and talking about it with your school friends, but your world was small because we were young. We didn't have technology, so it wasn't really like you had access to like a phone or, you know, just all of these websites and Instagram and social media where you can connect with like-minded people. And so it felt very much like, okay, I was really obsessed with Twilight. I knew a lot of people were obsessed with it, but there were only a handful of other people in my like circle that were in it with me, and none of them were in it with me to the extent that I was. And now it's just like, this is who I am. Like, I am just obsessed with these things, and there are so many people who are equally obsessed with these series, and it's just really nice to be like, oh, there's an entire community of people who are just like me.
And that's why we're here on God's Internet talking to y'all. So thanks for joining us in this book renaissance that we're having.
Yeah, what a nice walk down memory lane this was.
Yeah, this has been a blast. And if you haven't read Harry Potter, The Mysterious Benedict Society, The Phantom Tollbooth, Warrior Cats, Matched, etc.,
Hunger Games, Twilight,
and Twilight, obviously, read them. Fuck it.
You're never too old. You're never too old to go back and read. They should be so easy to read if they're for younger audiences. Are you kidding?
100%.
Those are nothing is going to be a better ego boost than sitting down and just
cranking in one day,
bodying a book in a day.
And if you need more book recommendations from childhood and or middle school that you want to use as that ego boost, we have them. So comment your favorite. Maybe someone else will take inspiration.
Or like, if there are young readers, young people in your lives that you feel like would benefit from these recommendations, or just like in general, these are it's a really good opportunity to just kind of like interface with young people and be like, here,
Totally.
have a book.
I feel like young people are too invested in iPads these days, so put a book in their hands and hope for the best.
Give them some wizards, give them some vampires, do something.
Yeah, it might just break them out of the spell. Okay, gang. Well, we'll see you next time. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. Come engage with us in the comments.
Send us an email. Literally,
DM
whatever.
us. Talk to us however you want.
Yeah, we're here. So we love books and we love you and we love talking about books with you. So do that.
Math.
Amen. Bye.
Bye.